Lisa, Lori, welcome to the show. Welcome to the event. Thanks for being here. How are you guys doing today?
We're doing good. Doing good. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it's good to have you here. So we're going to take this next conversation into the realm of creating good experiences on your website, with your donation form, with your registrations, all of that stuff that you guys really specialize in over there at I Donate. And so we talked with Noah about communications and creating those good communications and good principles of communications. I know that you both have a lot of expertise and probably opinions on designing good user experience for your donors and supporters, right? So let's just get right into it. First, can we get a little bit of background about who each of you are? Lori, let's start with you.
Sure. I'm Lori Finch, and I'm the head of sales for I Donate currently, but I've spent the last 15 years in fundraising or working for fundraising technology companies. So as I say, like, I'm really excited to be here because I've been waiting 10 years for for this time and to get to this point and to really start talking about digital. So that's just a little bit about me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks,
And I'm currently the Director of Philanthropic Solutions at I Donate, hanging out with Lori. I come out of the nonprofit background, being a Chief Development Officer for many years at a community foundation, a CEO of a nonprofit, also CFRE. But I spent many years being a Director in Strategic Corporate and Event Marketing in for-profit and nonprofit. And so that's sort of all that I come to the table with. So I'm super excited to be able to talk to everybody.
Awesome. Well, you've both done it all, and I'll give a quick fun fact for the audience. Janet, who was on our leadership panel this morning, Lori and Lisa and I all worked together at one point in our careers here. So we've all been around the block a little bit.
So it was exciting to see her.
Yeah, it's great to have you guys here. It's great to like have this sort of an event create these connections again and, cause us to reach out to each other and to talk to each other about this stuff again. So let's just get right into it. We're talking with Noah about communication pathways. Now I want to talk about, okay, you've gotten people interested with your communication, right? Your message, like they click the button, they go. What's next? Let's talk through creating good experiences on a few different contexts. Let's first start out with donations, and then I'd like to get into, volunteer and event signups as well with you guys. So who wants to kick us off? I know, like I said, you've both got a lot of opinions on this stuff.
Oh, well, I can jump in.
Yeah, Lisa, we're starting
on cue.
with Lisa.
Here we go. I'll just jump right in. So based on all the conversations we've heard yesterday and today, we know now that our donors want us to meet them where they are. No longer are we putting something out there that they have to come to us. It's really about meeting them where they are so they can donate how they like to, when they want to, and what platform they want to. And so when we start looking at donations in particular, we want to make sure that that experience when they come to that through their phone, their laptop, whether out on a picnic somewhere, text to give, we want to make sure that experience is very easy, very simple, and we've given them clear direction when we set up that form. I think part of it is also, before we set up that form, and we've heard a little bit of this earlier, is really understanding who we're reaching out to. And I think that's right now one of the number one things that we spin up a form because great, they'll see it, they'll donate and go. But we're really not putting any practice behind it of who we're trying to engage with, why we're trying to engage, and the reason for them to come to it. When they get there for the experience, then we want them to complete it in an easy, simple manner. So
yeah, and I would add to that too, and we want it to be contextually relevant to them. And that's kind of one of those things that I think really builds on what Noah's talking about is that it's not, the experience is more than just hey, you hit this donation form and it's on a website and, you want it to go through and you want it to be super simple. And you don't want to ask them for their social security number or their mother's maiden name on it. But you also want them to get there and say, okay, well, I know this ask is relevant for me. And so technology is super cool. And, now that you've got sophisticated CRM systems and marketing systems, you can sort of know your donor all the way through and create that unique giving experience to them when they hit your simple donate now button. So, and I think that's kind of like where, when we talk about great experiences, it's the know your donor type thing that Lisa and I are talking about, that really sort of sets organizations apart.
Yeah. So let's get into some practicality on that. Let's get into the weeds a little bit on what does that mean? How do you put the right experience in front of the right donor, right? And we don't want to ask for social security numbers and maiden names. What do we ask for? What's the right amount of information to get them across the finish line, but also get enough data on them,
Yeah, and well, to that end, I think it's going to be like, what are the goals of the campaign you're running? So is it, if you're a university and you're running an annual fund campaign, I mean, if you're sending an email from your database, you already know things like their class year and where they've given in the past. And so you don't have to ask for those things. You might pre-fill those things into a donation form, but you may want something that you can leverage in your CRM, like, hey, I have a special interest. You might want to add a question that says hey, I have a special interest in alumni book clubs or something and give them a flavor for that. I mean, these days, friction-free, most people on mobile devices, I'd like to say you don't have to ask for much besides your zip code and your credit card number, a name, an email, I guess, would be sort of the simple thing. Lisa, what do you think?
Yeah, that and the fact that we all think we have to just put one donation form up. To Lori's point, you have the ability to do multiple donation forms. You have a form. If you've got a specific campaign, spin up a form specifically for that so that you are addressing exactly what you want and need during that conversation. We often tend to think a donation is also transaction. And I'm into transformative. Take it beyond just being click on a phone, click on the donation, and I'm going through. You have an opportunity to create that dialogue. And so maybe there is a question you're going to ask them around a cause area that you're working on. So it's thinking about how to use that form appropriately and not that you just have to use one.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and that actually, if you're bucketing people into different campaigns, let's say through different forms on whatever, online fundraising platform you're using, that makes your reporting easier too, because then you can go in and you can say who donated to this campaign specifically. So when you think about bucketing that, I think that's a really good recommendation. And you can also put information on that form or on that page in that campaign that's very specific to the need of that campaign, right? So it's continuing that communication. So what are some other ways that you guys think technology can help to support organizations right now? We've talked about creating easy donation experiences. I like that you brought up mobile, Lori. We were talking yesterday on day one about mobile engagement with Ryan over at BrightGuest. And I think when you think about how people pay for things today on their phone, I typically am Amazon, buy it now, it's just boom, buy it now, right? And so our donors experience that in the rest of their lives, and that's why it's so important for us to give them those donation experiences. What other ways can technology really support our organizations right now?
Yeah, I mean, there's so exactly what you're saying in terms of donors being sort of today's consumers. We talk a lot about that at I Donate, and even now more than ever, kind of making it easy. But I mean, from a donor perspective, there's tons of different channels that they could engage with you from technology. But I might be more on the stewardship and how do you engage them to get them to give the gifts side of this. And, I've been doing a lot of brainstorming with organizations on how to take, events I know you've talked about how do you take events virtual? How do you do all this stuff? But how do you actually steward donors once you've got them too? So we think a lot about that. Zoom, town halls, where you're sharing information, how can you do virtual coffee dates? How do you do that? I mean, and so there's technology. I mean, I think when I saw the end of Noah's thing, that whole, this is physical distancing, not social distancing. Like, how do you kind of keep them connected to what your cause is? So, I mean, video, I don't know, Lisa, what do you think about when you think about how technology can help?
I think, to your point, we're very consumer now. We're so used to going, we're going to get an Uber immediately and a ride share and we're off and running. And so our donors want that too. But we can't lose that connection that we have. And so utilizing all the different, when we think about fundraising channels that are out there, and there are multitudes of ways to reach, and making sure that we are touching them, again, the way they want to be touched. So peer-to-peer might work for around families, but it may not work for somebody in the more mature generation. Maybe a text to give is somebody that's better for the millennials. So really understanding where that technology fits and the person that you're talking to. But for us as fundraisers, technology is amazing for us on the back office side. It is freeing us up to do much more, understanding what's being captured in the back office, how it's easier to manage, easier to reconcile for those of us that used to do that. So from that standpoint, I think technology within the nonprofit space is really a big benefit for us. When I think about it from the consumer's standpoint or our donors, it allows us to interact with them in that way. I think what's happening right now with this pandemic is two things. One, technology is going to be so much more core to a fundraising strategy than it ever was. And I think it's a big shift because it's always been a component. It's never been the core. And so I think there's going to be a big shift there. The other thing that's happening, we have generations out there that were sort of hesitant and afraid of technology. They're jumping in completely. They're using Zoom. They're doing, coffee chats. They're, texting their family members, and they're connecting in other ways that technology is happening. So I think we're also now walking into a world that is much more comfortable with technology that I think will be a benefit as we grow our donors.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I mean, as I mentioned sort of at the beginning, I've been waiting 10 years for this. Like I bit the digital fundraising bug back in 2009, 2010, and was like super excited about it. But I think one of the things that excites me about how technology can help is again, this helps leverage like sort of the creativity that's, I call it hiding in organizations, because, you can't say, we're at a time where you can't say like, oh, that's just how we do it. I don't know how many times I've heard like marketing and development people tell me like, oh, well, we've always done it this way. And I'm like, guess what? You get to put on your creative hat and be like, we can't do it that way. So how are we going to do it better? And sort of imagine that. And there's a ton of technology you can leverage to do that. And so that's kind of where I get excited is that we're going to have all these like, we are going to see a lot of innovation that comes out of this in terms of how we engage and connect with people and how we fundraise.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that. It's true. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that's right. The tools that are being developed right now, I think, are going to be really, really interesting to see sort of where actually the folks who are doing that, innovating right now, are going to take us. I think that's the thing right now. We don't know what we're going to see up in the next few months of like this space is where we're going to be. And I couldn't agree more that the technology and the digital tools are going to become central and core because they can't not be. Now you can't kind of be like, oh, that's a nice to have. Or, oh, I'll think about that as part. But I think one of the things I've been hearing you guys talk is thinking about how you then sort of connect maybe even some of these various opportunities to engage people and sort of taking people from one sort of, oh, you came in this door and now I want to show you a couple other doors still maybe in this virtual space. I don't know if either of you could talk about like how to navigate, you have somebody coming in and you're stewarding, how to help the organizations think about engaging with folks then maybe in a different, a new way, even if they walked in a door, how to help them think about some different ways to engage.
Yeah. And I think, go ahead, Lisa.
I was going to say, and I think that's something that as we as a community probably don't do a good job of anyway. So they come in, they've always gone to a gala event and they've always had the dinner. And then we don't think about putting them somewhere else or moving them somewhere else. And that's not necessarily just, they come as a one-time donor. How do we make them recurring? How do we make them someone who wants to give of their time, participate in events? We often think of them, this is the one they come to and this is one they give to. What I love about what the technologies out there is we have an opportunity to interface them in different ways. I came to this gala and bought a ticket, but now I can reach out to you with a Tickets to Give campaign around something you're doing. So I can actually interact with them in different ways than just one channel. And I think that's the other exciting piece about where we are with technology right now is we're not locked into one channel anymore. We always think about it's just a donation form or you just do events. No, you can take me as a donor and I can do peer-to-peer. I can do this. And we have this opportunity now to engage them in those different ways so that they, in the long run, of course, become closer to us as an organization and really understands the work we do beyond just that engagement. I don't know if that answered the question, but
yeah. I mean, that's kind of what I'm getting at.
I think that what Lisa's trying to say is like, you can become stickier with those donors if you can get them to do, I mean, it's sort of like how you think big brands think about, like, how do I like get them to keep buying Coke or Pepsi or whatever it is. It's like you get them in different channels. And in this case, you might do that. And I said, I mean, like for me, organizations have this huge, I mean, we talked a little bit about it, but the volunteers, like there's this huge like army of supporters of your organization who may be like rock star fundraisers for your organizations. And so I'm really excited about, I mean, I've really always kind of been intrigued by peer-to-peer, but like that, I think this is going to be like, there's going to be huge advancement on what that actually means and who's actually doing it. And that's a channel that's like pretty easy to deploy and like sort of let people do it, whether it be on Facebook, which is not my favorite, but like it is a great tool. I mean, it's easy to use. People know how to do it, or it's using some other platforms. I think there's just like a ton of potential out there that's sort of like sitting ready to go, but just hasn't had, organizations haven't said like, oh, well, we need to do it. And now they do.
And how to engage your volunteer force right now in a way that they can't come and do the thing. You should be like, how do I keep them engaged in using some of these digital tools and doing different ways? And I think some of the things we'll talk about how to do virtual events later, but it's the idea of like, almost have to create a new way to engage and say, we've never had, maybe we never had that 5K walk that we don't need to turn virtual, but why don't we hold a virtual party or a virtual whatever, just because it's a way to engage and create a sense of community that we need so desperately right now, and using some of the digital tools to bridge the gap.
Exactly.
And I think you guys are going to talk about virtual events later, but when you think about those events that you're canceling and putting virtually, we tend to think about the event specifically and not the real reason for that event. What is the actual outcome we want from that event? What is that? It is an engagement. Is it a connection? Is there other ways that I can get that aren't in person, and getting them to think beyond, it's always an event, this is what we've done, and thinking about, well, what was the full outcome of that? You wanted to create this environment where people came together. You wanted to get your brand and awareness out there. There are ways to do that without having to do an in-person event. And so I love the fact that we're all now starting to think that way.
Yeah, for sure. In fact, the next session with Rich and Kelly is about how your grandma can even go to a virtual event or do a virtual event. I think that even your grandma can go virtual. I think that's what we call it, something like that. So, no, it's true. I mean, now is a time where, the way I like to look at challenge, and this is a challenge, is that the best way to overcome a challenge is to really like start to study the challenge. Like, what is it about that challenge that's making your life difficult? And if you can really study it and understand things as much as possible, that's when you can start to mentally pivot, and start to realize that, as both of you said, I think all three of you said this, the way we've always done it isn't going to fly now. And we have the tools to pivot and to do things differently. So, I really appreciate everything you guys shared here today, and I think it's really important to wrap our minds around it. And if you're sitting back and listening to this and thinking about, well, they talked about text to give, and they talked about this, and they talked about that. And there was a question that came in about CRMs, and we'll get into that a little bit today. You know, start with one thing. You know, right now, don't feel like you have to walk away from this and take on the world. Start with one thing that was interesting that you think, okay, maybe we can do that one thing and pivot here. And that'll help you start to kind of like wrap your head around making adjustments and being agile.
Right.
Yep.